Well, this week's installment of In Retrospect, the number of municipalities getting clean audits seems to be getting worse, or should we say thinner, every year, despite the recommendations from the Auditor General's office. The 2021-2022 financial year, only 38 municipalities out of 257 achieved clean audits. On Wednesday, the AG saying that there was 4.74 billion rand in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 25.47 billion was unauthorized expenditure, while 1.6 billion was spent on consultants without any impact on municipalities being felt. Well, let's speak now on how the situation can be turned around, and we're joined by Pakstau. He is the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, thank you very much for your time. Every time I talk to you, I always remember you as Mayor. And perhaps this is an opportune moment for me to kick off the question with you and that experience of having been a mayor of a major metro, by the way. What, in your experience, is a major challenge within municipalities? What have you identified over the years as being a major challenge?
Well, thank you very much and good morning, Xoli. I should say in the first instance, the issues around revenue and the financial sustainability of municipalities is of major concern. Even as I was in the city of Johannesburg, we had identified electricity revenue as a threat to the municipality, to the extent that people are moving off the grid, to the extent that the tariffs approved by NERSA do not always match what the bulk purchases are, and therefore the pressure that municipalities inevitably face that placed them under enormous pressure in terms of financial sustainability and their ability to deliver the most basic services.
Yeah. Well, the finances, yes, they are a major issue. Perhaps it's their management that also compounds the situation, Mr. Dao. And I'm saying this because the Auditor General complained about the heavy reliance on consultants. 1.6 billion rand this year was spent, 1.3 billion in the previous year. That talks to the competency of the actual administrators. Who are these people that are employed to actually do the job of managing these municipalities, whether it be finances or any other areas?
And it suggests only that we need a major rethink about certain areas of local government administration, particularly in the smaller municipalities that struggle to attract the appropriate skills. Many of our municipalities that have a low revenue base necessarily struggle to attract accountants, engineers, and other professionals into their fold to be able to execute on their mandate, and therefore rely on external service providers to be able to assist them in executing their responsibilities, because people simply just don't apply for the jobs that they are advertised, either because of standards of living in particular areas, or simply because of the remuneration, because there are remuneration structures that are prescribed, and low revenue municipalities struggle in terms of the remuneration of specialized professionals to come into their fold. So we do need a rethink of some sort, and partly that's why we're implementing the district development model, so that we have a support mechanism that's coordinated at a district level that involves all the spheres of government in providing direct support to our municipalities.
Yeah.
But there's also the reality of mismanagement, and I don't think that we should shy away from that. The reality is that there are instances of mismanagement of the finances of the municipality, lack of adequate controls, and some of that actually requires that we be stringent in ensuring that disciplinary action is taken against officials who do not do their job appropriately.
Yeah.
And we've been monitoring that as Cogta to ensure that municipalities take appropriate action.
Well, when you talk about a rethink, can I latch on to that word and say, would that rethink extend to cadre deployment?
Well, Rethink is about ensuring that we have people with the appropriate skills and capability to be able to execute on their mandate and to enable municipalities to execute their executive obligations. And to the extent that you bring in people without the requisite skills, I think that it would be a problem.
And so?
We as Cogta have prescribed minimum standards. We have prescribed minimum standards that suggest that, in fact, unless you possess a particular qualification, there are areas in which you cannot be appointed in a municipality, and we're looking closely at that. Municipalities that are not meeting those required standards are being engaged continuously, and we raise this with our counterparts in the provinces to ensure that municipalities comply to the minimum standards as prescribed.
Can I ask this question, Deputy Minister? I'm sorry to cut in. Can I ask this question? Has cadre deployment destroyed the very fabric of how municipalities are run? Can the current government, ANC-led government, take that responsibility? Is that something you're willing to do, or at least admit to?
Well, I think cadre deployment applied wrongly can be a threat to any government system because, in fact, if you look at what the principles behind cadre deployment are, it is about ensuring that we identify the best amongst the best, which we would call cadres, to be appointed and assigned to particular responsibilities. Now, there are instances where this has been abused by certain of our structures, and I think admittedly it has been a problem. It's a matter that we are addressing in the National Executive of the ANC. You would know that I'm responsible for the Local Government Intervention Task Team in the ANC, and we've identified this as amongst the threats to local government that need to be addressed to ensure that the appropriate people with the appropriate skills are appointed.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a degree of exaggeration to the extent that the extent to which particularly black professionals have been deployed, they are attached with a brush of a cadre, which might not always be true, but I think that we should not discourage people to be able to come into the system, and where there have been mistakes, they correct the mistakes. But I do worry that, in fact, almost every senior black civil servant is attached with a paintbrush of cadre deployment, which is done inappropriately, and I don't think that that's true.
I'm going to move on from this subject, I promise, but I take from you, as a journalist, I listen with a particular ear. When you say it's an exaggeration, it reminds me of the statements that were made by the AG when she was talking to Parliament this week. And she seemed to place emphasis that when the tone from the top is set, then you begin to see change down below. And she was making particular reference to the Free State, that there is a new provincial administration there, and clearly at the level of the Cogta MEC, there does seem to be urgent change that is being effected. Where am I going with this? In Johannesburg, the city that you once ran as mayor, there has been an issue of a current mayor who is said to have or to not have a matric certificate. So when I talk about a tone being set from the top, how important is it? I know he's a politician, but how important is it that people with qualifications, proper qualifications, are deployed even at political level so that down below people are able to toe the line, and indeed services are delivered to people by skilled professionals?
It is important. It is important that we ensure that people have got the requisite skills to be able to run these very complex organizations such as our metropolitan municipalities. I should say, wearing a different hat as a member of the ANC National Executive Committee, we have prescribed minimum requirements for particular positions in metropolitan municipalities and in other municipalities. We haven't started to ensure that people acquire the appropriate skills or have the appropriate skills to be assigned to particular responsibilities. Of course, it is a choice of political parties to make that decision and ensure that that decision is implemented. It's not a uniform decision on political parties. The one thing that we can prescribe as a department, or coming back to our department, we can prescribe minimum requirements for administrators, but we cannot prescribe to political parties who they select as their candidates to be elected into office. But I do agree with you that running particularly our metropolitan municipalities is a complex organization. And that you need to attract the best possible skills both into the political and administrative management of these institutions, including the requisite experience. We've seen instances where, in fact, there is an erosion of capacity even in the administration of our municipalities. And we see that in the results. The financial results talk, the results in terms of performance talk in the institution, and we are extremely worried as a department about those situations.
Yeah.
I should say that as government, we also undertake responsibilities to support municipalities through the National Treasury City Support Program. An executive leadership program was convened in the past 2 weeks, wherein both experienced people from local, but also other practitioners were invited to capacitate and to support metropolitan leadership, our mayors, our MMCs for finance, our speakers and other colleagues, including city managers and other colleagues. So we do need to ensure that we continuously empower people to be able to execute their responsibility.
Yeah, final question. And it centers around instilling stability, or at least restoring stability in municipalities. Financially, these entities are in dire straits, Deputy Minister. I don't need to tell you that. I mean, you only have to look at Tshwane and how much is needed now to fully rehabilitate the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant. And so my question to you is, where to from here? Is the Department of Cogta, is there a plan that has set timelines on how we can turn the situation around financially, but at the same time, the other big threat, and the AG makes mention of this, is the instability brought on immediately after elections. And I suspect she's talking about the coalition-run municipalities, the chaos that is there. What is the plan?
Of course, we've had problems with the way in which coalitions have been managed, particularly in our larger cities and those that have coalition governments, and the instability that has brought to the institution. And no doubt, leadership has a direct impact on the institution. So it's not just about changing seats between political parties. There's uncertainty created in the administration. There's decision-making that is delayed in the administration depending on which political parties are anticipated to be in office. So this instability is a significant problem. And we've identified the need to start developing regulations of some sort to ensure that coalition management is done in a mature way and maintain a degree of stability. It will be an intense debate because we should not have the other extreme where we essentially suppress the right of political office bearers to make decisions under objective circumstances. But right now, it has been a problem the way in which it's managed, and we've identified the need for regulations. With regards to long-term planning, as I said, we've adopted the district development model. We are increasing our capability. You would know that we had contracted the DBSA in our pilot or prototype sites. That contract has come to an end. We're now building, based on those experiences, capacity in the department, in our municipal infrastructure support agent that would look directly at, in fact, escalating the implementation of the district development model. But there are critical policy issues that also require discussion.
Do you think you're ready to let go, though, Deputy Minister? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you really think that you're ready to let go of those technical skills that were brought by the DBCSA or DBSA, because they are the same implementing agent that are now being enlisted to try and sort out Rooiwal? So are you really ready to let go of them, or is it time to renew, perhaps?
No, when we engaged with them, we said, help us set up a prototype so that we can learn from the prototype and build from there. The capacity that we're building with them and with the experiences they brought to bear. But this is about creating a degree of certainty and permanence and rolling out comprehensively the implementation. So we're not just walking away from the transaction with the DBSA, certainly not. we are working with them to say, based on the lessons, what is the capacity that we need to bring in? And some of those skills that we would be bringing in on a more full-time basis would be the skills that we utilized at the TPSA. So not walking away in an irresponsible way, certainly not.
Deputy Minister of Cogta, Park Starwood, let me thank you very much for your time. Well, the financial situation, or should we say the financial health of municipalities, has been a major talking point this week, and that's how we wrap up this week's In Retrospect.